I've been playing Diablo 4 for the past month, not quite as much as I would like to, but here's what I've got. Level 90 Barbarian, cold-blooded trash. Here's his attack, power, armor, and life. Here's all these stats. We got a helmet, grasping whirlwind to pull the enemies into me while I'm spinning. Cooldown reduction on there. That's probably the most ideal stat for that, for all my shouts and everything. We got Rage of Haragoth for the cooldown reduction as well for my shouts. Never got to try Gores when they had the whirlwind dealing 60% of the total base damage when you stopped. So I only get to experience half the fun, but you know, it probably was overpowered. It might have actually been other aspects though that were overpowered that were also getting bunched in with this that were making it seem more overpowered than it was, but you know, it is what it is. I don't know if we're ever going to see tier 100 nightmare dungeons with the whirlwind barbarian until a DLC or something. Protector pants, that's really the important part, the aspect that we put on here. And then we got damage reduction while fortified. One of the things, I need to re-roll some of these stats on the gear. Need to re-roll some of the stats on the gear, and the problem with that is it just costs so much the more that you re-roll it. So I think my boots are getting up to like 4 million or something to try to get better movement speed on them. So maybe we'll just luck up and find a better pair of boots on the ground somewhere in a dungeon or something. We'll have to see. We got the movement speed on these. We got critical strike granting movement speed, the wind striker aspect, pretty good. Dire whirlwind on the mace. This one was one of the ones that got nerfed earlier on. I didn't really get to experience it in its full glory, but you know, I'm gonna see how far I can push with this character as he gets like 100 and everything. One thing that I'll say about a lot of these items and the aspects is it kind of forces you to be cookie cutter if you do want to play really far and push hard into the dungeons and stuff like that. So you're gonna kind of essentially be wearing set gear just with a different flavor to it. So we got expectant on the sword. One thing I like about the swords is they roll critical strike as an implicit. So we got critical strike twice on all of our swords. So we got expectant aspect on here, and then we got conceited aspect on here. Double critical strike on the swords again. And then we got double crit strike on this sword as well with limitless rage. All of my swords have royal emeralds in them to give more damage to vulnerable with our crit strikes, and we're crit striking a ton with whirlwind. So we got bold chieftain. You know, I'm 3 points off perfect on this, but it gets the job done, and it'll definitely help to have 1.9. I imagine it's only going to help with maybe like 1 or 2 tiers of nightmare dungeons, honestly. It's not going to make or break your character, I don't think. It'll help. It'll make it play a lot more streamlined. Band of Echoing Fury. This one's a really good one for getting, you know, keeping your fury up so you can just stay spinning. We got Edge Masters. This one's a good one. You know, that first hit with the whirlwind, and then sometimes if you've already been spinning for the 2 seconds, you know, to get you 30%, because you get 30% damage added to your whirlwind once you've been spinning for 2 seconds with this violent whirlwind. And that, if you can have full fury at the same time as that, can be pretty nice. I mean, that's like an ideal situation, usually like in the middle of a big mob after you just shouted a couple times. So here's my skill tree. I'm just gonna mouse over it. I don't think it needs like a ton of time. I'm pretty sure if you're that concerned, you can just like look at a build guide on max roll or something. I didn't really do that, and I played mostly solo, so that's why I didn't level as fast. I also didn't dungeon spam when they had better density, so I kind of missed out on the speed a little bit. So here's all my stuff. I'm using Wrath of the Berserker. I might eventually switch back to Call of the Ancients because it really carried me a lot during the story. So I think that could be a good one to use just to, you know, be able to dodge attacks while they're, you know, not taking any damage and dealing damage to a boss or something. Could be good for survivability pushing further into the game. Here's all my boards. I know they're not perfect. I need to level up some more glyphs, and then Once I get 100, I'm gonna reset all my boards so I can like optimally position them, and then I'm gonna calculate how many nodes to get to each spot and find out which board to use where to get there the fastest. But here's what I'm using. I'm using Wrath Glyph. I'm using Martial Glyph for the cooldown reduction. I'm using Ire for that berserk damage and then less damage from elites while berserking. I got Exploit. I think Exploit's honestly the best glyph in the game. And I think that the glyphs are the most important part of this, and then probably the rare nodes. Some of the legendary nodes are pretty nice, but I don't think that they're necessary. Like I skipped out on some of them because I wanted the glyphs and I wanted to pump up my glyphs more. And then some of these like magic nodes are pretty nasty. Some of the rare nodes, like this damage to elites, this is really good. You know, physical damage, attack speed, things like that. Really, the exploit is so good though because vulnerable damage is multiplicative, critical strike is multiplicative. Like a lot of these things, like physical damage, that's just additive damage. You know, you don't want to focus fully in on it, but it's a nice supplement to have. We got Imbiber. This thing is pretty nice. You know, I need to level it up and then put more points into it, but the damage while healthy is always good. This is one of those ones I picked later on because it doesn't seem as crucial as some of the other ones. I've been swapping around where I put the glyphs on the board to try to get more points out of them and try to kind of min-max everything, but I feel like a lot of the power kind of is gated behind Paragon points, so hitting 100 is like more important than it ever was in another Diablo game. So for my expertise, we're using the two-handed mace expertise. I actually was unaware up until like a couple days ago that on your skills that you actually have like the arsenal selection thing. So I just had mine selecting automatically for me like a noob. But lunging strike, we're using the two one-handed weapons because it does a lot faster attack speed, and then we gain some bonuses for when like we swap weapons and stuff to get a little bit of fury back. Then we got Whirlwind. We're using the mace. It's set to select automatically, but we've been using the mace since the start of the game without even knowing. Meanwhile, everybody else was just being cookie cutter with the sword. I actually honestly think that the mace is better now, but I might change my mind if I get my hands on the grandfather. But then again, the grandfather might just be in my inventory, or sitting on my back while I'm still spinning around with the mace if it does more damage, and the grandfather turns out to just be a stat stick for the character. You know, we'll have to see. When you're on the outside of enemies that have the suppression field, which is like the big bubble, they wind up, sometimes you'll start spinning on the outside and you go into the bubble and they don't take damage from your whirlwind because there's some type of bug, and it's treating it as if you're shooting missiles from the outside of their force field, which is just broken because it's like you're a melee character. If I stop spinning to go into the bubble and then respin, I lose all of my defense buffs, I lose all of my damage buffs and other things. Like I lose literally at least 30% damage, if not more. I definitely have my barb built up more like a glass cannon than a tank. So, one thing I definitely would say, there's a lot of annoying crowd control in this game. It's definitely like those spiders literally making me stuck. Literally being completely stuck still. If the spiders are at your feet or whatever. It definitely has way more of a platformer game feel than Diablo 2.
I need more time.
See, watch. Look at that. Look at blocking spider host. Tainted spider host. Taking no damage. Look at that. That's the bug right there that I was just talking about with the... That's a good way to end the video, actually. That right there is something that needs to be fixed. I start my whirlwind outside of the suppression mine, and then this is how we end up. Look at... Is that his ass cheeks?
This will be your last stupid mistake.